It's an interesting passage. This is wrapping up the Gospel of John. We're just at the end here. And so this is kind of the final parting marching orders that we're getting from Jesus to the disciples. And it's interesting because after all of this has happened, all the excitement of the Easter and everything's happened, what do the disciples do? They go back to fishing. It's what they knew from before. It's like, well, I guess we fish because I don't know what else to do with this. And so they go out that night and they fish all night long and they get nothing at all. And as the dawn starts to break, you see a figure on the shore, and it's Jesus. I imagine Jesus possibly had been watching them all night long, just laughing. Like, this is you're not going to catch anything because this isn't the job you're supposed to be doing anymore. We talked about this. When he brought them on board, he said, we're going to be fishing for people now. You've got a new calling, a new ministry, a new job. Life isn't supposed to just go back to the same after we've encountered Jesus. It's supposed to take us in a new direction, but they were going back to the same. So it was letting them just have this whole long, dark night of the soul where nothing was coming to it. And at the end, Jesus says, well, throw the net off the other side of the boat. And I imagine the disciples had been throwing the net off both sides of the boat all night long, up one side, down the other side of the lake. There was nothing that they hadn't tried, but they're like, okay, watch this not work, And it fills the net, and they realize who it is and who has called them. And they realize still, kind of throughout these next moments of the conversation, what they are being called back to doing. So we have that interaction between Jesus and the disciples about, do you love me? Then what are you doing? This is what I'm asking you to do if you love me. And there's this threefold thing. You can tell the hurt at the end because Simon Peter's like, yes, obviously I love you. Are we doing this again? Because we already did the cock crow 3 times thing, and that didn't turn out well for me. So can we not do the 3 times thing again, But we're really hitting this point. And I think we're doing so for 3 reasons. One, to make sure that it sinks in. This is important. This is Jesus giving them the new orders of what they should be doing. So they're not supposed to be fishers, they're supposed to be feeding the people. And 2, very literally, because they just caught 150-something fish, like what are we going to do with them? And Jesus is telling very literally what to do with them. Don't take it to the market, sell it, get a big profit, invest in more boats, start your new fishing enterprise up again. No. Just feed the people. Feed the flock. And the 3rd reason that we get it 3 times is because it's us who is reading this. I mean, you feel that probably in the text. By the 3rd time, it feels like it's really pointing out of the text and at you. The sort of thing, like if this was filmed, you can kind of see Jesus talking to Simon on the 3rd time, kind of turning to the camera and being like, feed my flock. You're like, oh, me, I'm supposed to be doing that. Got it, right? So it's really using that reiteration to make sure that sinks in. This is what we're supposed to be doing. Taking care of each other. That's what it means. After we've had this experience with Christ, we're supposed to take that and care for each other. And that's being lived out in this story. This is our kind of our final marching orders from Jesus, is what do you do if you love Christ? Feed the flock. And then his last words is, follow me. So between those motions, the following Jesus and feeding the flock, this is what we're supposed to be doing. Well, some days I like to go deep into the theology. Today I'm actually going to tell some stories about a time in my life and my experience where I was in a ministry where we were feeding people, and talk about 3 little miracles that happened in that ministry that allowed it to happen. So this was my internship. I was up at a place called Highland Park, which is right next door to New Brunswick in New Jersey. And I was put in charge of this feeding program called The Table, in which we would just work off donations and volunteers, and we would try to make some food as much as we could and feed the people in that community that would come in to get the Sunday dinner in the evening. And it was mostly refugees and immigrants that settled there. And then we would clean up and pack up all the leftovers and plantovers, because we intentionally tried to make way too much food. And then we would take all those leftovers, load them into the church vans, drive like the 15 minutes out of Highland Park and into New Brunswick and down to the train station. And we'd set up a table and we'd put out the food and we'd just feed all comers. There's a lot of unhoused people, a lot of working poors, like rideshare people would just swing in, grab fuel, jump back into the car and keep going. and we just feed whoever we could. But this ministry, it had some things going for it. It had the support of the church in the kitchen. It had a relationship with the community college where a lot of our volunteers came from. And a good relationship with a partner ministry that helped us reach the unhoused people. So we had those things going for us. What we didn't have was enough direction and energy within our volunteers to make this happen. It was mostly just college students who are volunteering, and that doesn't mean they know how to work a kitchen, right? So we didn't have the energy, we didn't have the experience, and most of the time we didn't even have enough food to start with. And so we were falling short on our hopes for this ministry. And then I got put in charge of this, like, I don't know my way around a kitchen. My first job was Taco Bell, but this is totally different thing, you know? So I'm out of my depth. I'm working with people out of their depth. None of us know what we're doing, but we're just going to try to feed as many people as we could. But we could really use some help. So the first thing that happened that really helped transform this ministry was a Chinese woman came into the church, and she was a scholar at Rutgers. And she was a young scholar in this group of Chinese scholars that were at Rutgers. And so she got asked, because she was the low one on the totem pole, to go door to door, church to church, and beg and see if they could find somewhere where they could hold their meeting for as cheap as possible coming up. So, and someone had said, well, try some churches, you might get some luck there. So that's all she was doing. She was just looking for a cheap place where they could have their big annual gathering with this group. And she comes and she talks to me, and I listen, I can't make that call. I'm just the internship. She's like, yeah, you're cooking. You're in the kitchen, so you know. And I was like, well, yeah, but this is above my pay grade. I'm just doing this. And she's like, okay, but then what are you doing? I was like, well, and I kind of tried to explain what we're doing. You can tell I'm trying to put on this forceful voice because she was a force of nature person. And so she's like, okay, but why are you doing it? I was like, well, and I'm like, we just talked about that in Scripture, feed the sheep. We're just trying our best to feed the sheep. He said, okay, but why you? Why the church? Why isn't like other people doing? Why isn't the government feeding them? And now we're getting to the crux of it. I'm like, the great American experiment, and we rely on nonprofits and churches to fill in the gaps where sometimes the government doesn't meet. And she's like, this is the richest country in the world. Why in the world are the poor people outside? And I'm like, listen, I don't know. I mean, at that point, you got me. You got me. But we're trying to do our best over here to feed who we can. I said, okay, but if they fall through the cracks and they slip through the cracks, then what happens? Do they just die? And I'm like, sometimes, yes, they do. We're trying our best. And she's like, and she looks at me like, what are you cooking? I'm like, I don't know, that's the problem. I don't know what I'm doing. And she looks at me and goes, stir fry. And she goes in the back and she just starts in on it. And then she came the next week, and the next week, and the next week. And she took all that forceful energy that she had, and she used it when we actually needed someone bossy, honestly. Because we had the volunteer students who come in and didn't know they needed someone who just said, you are doing the dishes, you are over here. And she did that. She held that thing together, and she turned, it wasn't just her energy she brought. She leveraged the other things we were having, and it worked. Okay, so we were making whatever we could make and stir fry every week from then on out. Some people just came for Wendy's stir fry. They're like, I don't know what else you guys are cooking, but I'm here for the stir fry. I watched her make stir fry out of anything. She got a package of like pre-made salad mix that was on its way out, and they're like, what do we do with this? She's like, stir fry. And she's shaking the thing, and I'm like, that is salad, that's lettuce, what are you doing? It's going to be awful. But it was actually quite good. I was shocked. I was like, all right. I stand corrected. You can stir fry everything. I now have learned that is the case. So that's number one. Number two is another woman who comes in wanting something completely different, and she is also a personality and a half. She is this big personality that will kill you with kindness until she gets what she wants. So she's not the forceful one like her last one. She's the so sweet. How could you ever say no to this poor woman? But she's a poet as well. She's an eccentric. We could call her an eccentric. She's very eccentric. And she's a poet, and she had written these poems, and she had framed them, and she was taking them like between churches and coffee shops and trying to get someone who will hang them on the wall so that people will read her poetry. And so when I walked in to do the table, she had cornered the pastor and was refusing to hear no from him. As he's like, this is the, we have our decorations, blah, blah, blah. And she's just, but couldn't it, like, there's a space right here. One could think with, and just would not accept no. So at some point, the pastor's just like, go talk to him. I was like, hang on. You're throwing me under the bus? And so she comes over to me where I'm at the table. She's like, oh, are we going to put them up here on the walls where all the people are going to eat and all this? And I was just like, I'm not qualified to make this decision, but I'm having a really hard time telling you no, because you are so sweet, But eventually she says, so what are you doing? And I explained kind of the ministry, and she watches, and she can now see the energy. We've got Wendy over there who's like directing this, but there's still just a lot of like lack of know-how, because Wendy can make stir fry and blessings on that. But when it was, what do we do with the pasta dishes? We kind of got a little lost. And she's like, it really looks like you guys could need some help. We're like, yeah, that obvious, yeah, we could use some help. And she's like, well, 40 years of catering, I guess means something.
Oh.
I'll pitch in. And then the next week, she brings her husband, who's like some fancy chef at some fancy hotel in the area. And he's directing their entire hotel kitchen. He's the head chef of this hotel. And so he's used to making fancy food and all this. But his roots were more, he grew up making just food that you'd make at a table. And so he would do the fancy stuff all week long, and then on the weekend, he would really look forward to this. For him, it was like a celebrity chef challenge, where you just have these random weird ingredients. He's like, what can we make with this? So he just loved it. And the two of them brought all the experience that we needed through that door, because she wanted to hang up some poetry, with the energy of someone who's looking for a cheap place to have a gathering. And suddenly, except for the food, which we still didn't have enough of, things were happening in this kitchen. We were making food, good food, with good people, and everyone was loving the experience, both the volunteers and the people were telling, like, we got some good stuff out here now. It's like, well, none of my doing, but we sure do. So that brings us to the third thing, the food. And I wish I could remember exactly who it was my Jesus, who'd been watching me do this for the last couple of months, struggling and throwing the nets and not getting the food, who eventually said, try the right side of the boat to me. I can't remember whose voice that actually was, but someone said that. The equivalent there was, call Trader Joe's. But that's the equivalent of throw the net up there, like do the other thing that you aren't doing. Because they're just putting in a new Trader Joe's. And I've heard that someone said, I heard that they give away some decent food, so give them a call. So I called them, and I explained our ministry, and they said, are you 501c3? I said, we are. And they said, well, yeah, we do have that program where we could sign you up for one of our pickup days. And you come by, and you pick up all the food that we were going to chuck anyway. And it's like, sounds great, sign me up. So, all right, we got you down for Friday. So I show up, and I'm in this little sedan at the time, and I drive up, I park at the back where they tell me to go, and I come meet the people. I'm like, hi, I'm here for the pickup. And I'm like, good. And I look at my car, and I'm like, in that? And he's like, yeah, why? He's like, because you have to take all that. And he points at this massive bin, this massive, like this high bin, full of food. And I was going, what? He's like, you agreed to take all the food. You have to take it all. I'm like, I pick up the phone, I'm calling the church, I'm like, we need the van. This is a good problem, we need the van right now. Can we bring the van down? And we brought the van down, and we loaded it front to back with food. We had to install 2 new refrigerators and 2 new cabinets to hold all the food that we were getting. And I get it wasn't out of the kindness of Trader Joe's heart. They're a company. Someone somewhere decided that if they give it away, they can write it off versus throw it in the trash where it's nothing, right? So but it worked, and it was what we needed in that moment. And now we had the food, and we had the experience, and we had the energy, and we had a program. And the whole rest of the year was just riding that wave of this bounty that we had, and just trying to see how much good we could do. And this struggling program went for like just meager offerings to filling the church room with food, people who wanted food, and having amazing food so people would come back because the food was so good. And then we would take it down to the train station, and then the people with 50 years of catering experience were watching the unhoused people just kind of eating on the sidewalk, and like, oh, that'll never do. And they bring in their tables, and they start setting up tables and chairs, and one time she's even like bringing in candle lights and putting them on there, and we have these unhoused people sitting for candlelight dinners under the train tracks, eating this food that we had just whipped together because of some volunteer labor and some work. And I was just standing back and looking at it like, this is incredible. And the thing is I was lucky to witness this, but aside from just saying yes to the Spirit at times and calling someone, I didn't actually do any of that. I was just there to watch this happen. So this isn't me tooting my horn. This is me saying the Spirit is still working out there, and I've seen it. And when I see places that embrace that follow me and feed my sheep mentality and how much good can we do, that's infectious. And we watch that program grow and feed and take care of people. And we were done usually around 11 to midnight, and it was an hour drive home. So it's about like 1 a.m. when I would get home sometimes. And I was never tired. I was just so full of watching that Spirit work. It was an incredible experience I'm grateful for. So I share that because we're at the Feeding the Sheep passage. And I can say that there are miracles in this world that come around that goal of just take care of each other. Just take care of each other. You guys had an amazing quilt show here yesterday where you brought in the community, you offered your space, and you took care of the people's desire to feel loved and that their work is appreciated and that they have value. You gave that in this space. So you're doing the things. And it's wonderful, isn't it, to watch that work? I know everyone was saying how long of a day it was yesterday and everyone was tired from all the work, but you probably went home feeling pretty excited, pretty fired up, right? It can fill you. It can fuel you when the Holy Spirit is there working with you and alongside you. So for that I say, Amen. We're going to sing one of my favorite songs